recording and presentation. Greetings to everybody. My name is Khatuna Sambilshvili and I work on public sector innovation at UNDP Georgia. I'm happy to present today's roundtable dedicated to smart city and intelligent transportation practices in Moldova and Georgia, supported by Czech experts. This is a series of roundtables within the framework of Czech UNDP Partnership for SDGs, and it is aimed at bringing academic research together with the practitioners at the public and private sector ends to promote the dialogue around the various development issues. I'm very happy to have this multiple representation of the partners at today's gathering, and I would like to give floor to Dagmar Novohradska, who is leading Czech UNDP Partnership for SDGs at the Istanbul Regional Hub. Over to you, Dagmar.
Thank you, Katuna, and thank you, Jonas, for inviting us. I think you did a really great job to put together this team, and thank you for all participants being here, because for us it's very important to present such a strong expertise for what we all have, and it would be nice to have a great discussion on this topic later on. So let me introduce the Czech UNDP Partnership for SDGs. We are the program financed by Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Czech Republic, and we promote the Czech expertise and also Czech innovative solutions in priority countries. And two priority countries, what we have here, we have Moldova and Georgia. We are very happy now to have exchange of expertise between these two countries, especially today's topic is intelligent transport system. I think it's intelligent transport system. It concerns, I mean, it has impact of to all of us, right? If we are, we stop in the traffic lights and we are waiting, despite nobody's coming from other side, we are really nervous that we would like to deliver what we have planned for today. So I think it's really, it's not about only like building green better from COVID, but it's like everyday lives which was before COVID, during COVID, and now hopefully when COVID is leaving. So I think it's very important to look smartly at the solutions what we have in our cities. And our cities are busy, and we can only like remember our times during COVID 1 year ago when the cities were totally empty, and we just it just reminds, for example, for me, my childhood when the cars were not there, and but it's not reality anymore. So we have to really think about the smart solutions, and not only Czechs are very strong in the solutions in the intelligent transport systems. There are many good solutions in the world, but today we will speak about Georgian, Moldovan, and the Czech expertise in this topic. And I am very happy that we also have the Polish Challenge Fund on board, also on intelligent transport system in Batumi, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. So hopefully, and we will have within the Challenge Fund also the Czech company Infinity implementing the project with municipality of Tbilisi. So I don't want to take a long time because I am not the most relevant person to speak about intelligent transport system. So over to you, Katuna, and thank you again to all of you being here. Thank you
very much for the opportunity to work together with this amazing group of people. I'm happy to hand over to Nino Antadze, leading the environment portfolio at UNDP Georgia. Greet us on behalf of our country.
Thank you, Fatuna, and a very warm welcome to all participants of this semi-informal discussion. I hope that it will be very interesting. We know that the topic of today's discussion is a concern for everybody, and as rightly mentioned by Dagmar, lockdowns, COVID-related lockdowns showed us even more that it's very important. Suddenly, air became much more fresh and clean after the lockdown. So, of course, those of us who have been engaged in this business or in this area in terms of promotion or advocacy, etc., we knew that this is important. But this COVID lockdowns once again showed the significance of sustainable urban transport practices. So I'm very happy to that at today's discussion we will be also discussing or presenting our experience, the experience with sustainable urban transport practices in Batumi city. I'm happy that Etuna Lomadze, representing Batumi City Hall, will be actually making this presentation. And of course, I'm here to add or also to answer questions. But before ahead, I wanted to also say a little bit more about this initiative, which was implemented by UNDP Georgia. It was called Green Cities. So even the title of the project or initiative shows that, yes, our focus was on sustainable transport practices, but it actually covered many other areas as well in terms of also local or regional policies or even the national policies, also promoting healthy lifestyle, walking, prioritizing public transport versus cars, for instance, promoting cycling and encouraging expansion of cycling network in Batumi city, etc., etc. We have definitely observed certain lessons learned out of that experience. And I think it will be very important also for the audience and for this today's discussion to share some of those challenging situations or good practices or not that good practices. First of all, my observation is that it is crucially important to have a very good level of awareness amongst decision makers. Because countries like Georgia, at least I can speak on behalf of Georgia, still do not have this, enough technical expertise or knowledge in terms of, understanding the importance of sustainable urban practices. So we need to make sure that decision makers are well aware and have very good knowledge and understanding of the importance of applying such practices. This is one thing. Secondly, we were lucky having very strong commitment from Georgian government for implementing this Green Cities initiative, and especially Batumi City Hall. Throughout the project implementation, we have changed, or Batumi has changed 4 mayors, if I'm not mistaken. But for every newcomer, this remained as priority. So I think this is important. The commitment that was taken at the project design stage remained as priority throughout the project implementation. And it was really crucially important to have such very strong political commitment. Ownership by national authorities. Unfortunately, we faced certain challenges when it came to the national level sustainable transport strategies or frameworks. Gela, excuse me, Gela Kwashilava may remember, because he was one of our partners when we developed together with Dutch company, Urban Mobility, if I'm not mistaken, when we embarked on a very extensive stakeholder consultation process, surveys, assessments, like to see what is situation in Georgia in regards to national policies. And it appeared that basically Georgia does not have any policy related to sustainable urban transport. Of course, overall transport, yes, but not for urban transport. So there was a very big interest. There were several national consultations. Municipal authorities were attending those consultations, and then Gela's organization, as well as another one, they prepared, finally, a very interesting and nice piece of paper was prepared. But unfortunately, neither of state agencies or ministries were actually able to take full ownership over this process and actually keep it on the overall sustainable development agenda for the government. Again, this is my observation or lessons learned, that despite the fact that we engaged all possible stakeholders and partners, still there was some, I would not say skepticism, but perhaps limitations in the level of interest from national authorities. All municipal authorities were heavily interested, very much committed actually to get more information, to get better guidance, to have this standard approach or unified approach for regional urban transport connections, etc. I believe that at today's discussion there will be conversations or talks about it as well. But this is something that was or is still a concern for me, that finally we were not able actually to find a real home for a national urban transport policy in Georgia. The latest information was that Ministry of Regional Development and Infrastructure, which was at that stage launching self-governance strategy, wanted to have this as a part of self-governance structure or mechanism, and this was the latest agreement. But honestly, and of course this is for the open discussion today, I have not heard of any formalized structures or mechanisms in that regard. A few words about the initiative itself. The main purpose was to mitigate climate change risk and reduce greenhouse gas emissions through introducing sustainable urban transport practices. So what was done by the project, first of all, was to collect all the important data and information and basically develop a sustainable urban transport strategy and action plan, which covered all important topics. This was a very long process of, I believe Etuna will talk about it, but the process was interesting. Engagement and participation of all possible partners was very extensive, and I think this was the reason for a success of finalizing the strategy, and more importantly, adoption of the strategy by city council. So city municipality was engaged as a developer with the support from UNDP, but then it was adopted by city council, which is elected body. And this gave basically a green light to start implementing this strategy and action plan, which covered many aspects like parking, cycling, public transport, etc., etc. So I think that was a very, very important milestone in implementing this Green Cities initiative. And then later on, with the same UNDP support, we have financed several pilot measures out from that strategy and action plan, basically to demonstrate the good practices and also showcase importance of very good planning, evidence-based planning, and that all this information that was and data that was used for preparing such strategies and action plans. So I believe that
I think we have
residents of Batumi, and of course Etuna will be happy, I believe, to provide a bit more details. I'm sorry to take more time than just welcome or opening of this discussion, but I really wanted to share my experience and UNDP's view in that regard. And
Absolutely.
one more thing to mention is that we believed at the earlier stage that this initiative should become replicable in other cities, and others could get interested, because with this type of approach, then perhaps national level will get more interested. So, for instance, we have heard that a few other cities in Georgia, when they heard about Batumi Green Cities initiative, they got interested. One such example is Kutaisi, for example. And actually, Kutaisi has already started implementing something similar, basically with the same approach and same attitude. We know that Rustavi City is interested, and they also try to do to improve transport practices and urban mobility in Rustavi City. And of course, Tbilisi, but Tbilisi has its own structure and its own plan basically for that. But we already have some visible results in Tbilisi. However,
We have bits of interruptions, I believe. Yeah.
This process. Thank you.
Thank you so very much, Nino. We had a little bit of interruption right at the end, but I think overall it went all very smooth. Thank you very much for a very interesting introduction and starting point for this, especially starting with the lessons learned and making a reference towards participatory approach plus diverse perspectives from the national level and at the city level, which proves to be much more open to adopting this kind of strategies as well as opting for moving into action as well from the strategy point of view. So we will move now to the part of the introductions. Let me give you a brief overview how we structured our discussion today. We will have 3 presentations regarding a smart city and transportation systems. One will be about overall European experience. The second one will be about Moldovan experience of Chisinau, smart city planning. And then we will have a panel discussion and followed by Batumi experience by Etuna. And then we will have a very interesting panel discussion looking at the different perspectives of this topic, as Nino has very nicely outlined at the start of this, like issues of data, evidence-based sustainability, accessibility of diverse groups of the society in this process. So I'm very, very happy that we are able to have on board. Initially, we invited for the first presentation, Dr. Miroslav Svitek from Czech Technical University in Prague, but because he's traveling and currently is in the airport, it is Mr. Roman Dostal, if I'm saying your name correctly, Roman, who will present an overall intelligent transport systems overview from the European angle. And if we could make it a bit shorter, considering a longer intro, I would be really grateful. Thank you so much, Roman. Over to you.
Thank you. It's always difficult to make it a little shorter, but I'll do my best.
Please present yourself as well.
Yeah, I'm sorry. My name is Roman Dostal. I've been working on the same project as Josef Kocourek, and I have been working very closely with Miroslav Svitek as well. I'm from Czech Technical University in Prague and also from a company SmartPlan. Both of these institutions have participated in this project, and we would like to share our experience. And about sharing experience, I would like to thank to Miss Nina Andatse. You don't really need to apologize for making it longer, because you have mentioned something very, very important, and that is sharing experience. And if you can see my presentation, this is actually my first slide, and this is a coincidence. We didn't agree on this prior, but the shared experience is something that is more important than anything else in discussions and forums like this, because it allows to understand what problems other cities are facing and how they are dealing with it. Before I get to possible examples of ITC solutions and smart city solutions, I would like to mention that cooperation, a well-structured cooperation, is really the basics of any project and any creation of smart city strategies and implementation, because it can happen very easily that the city is taken hostage by corporations and companies offering their solutions, but only through cooperation with universities and ability to listen to people, the city can really decide well what they should do. Another amazing point about not well-informed decision makers. This is actually one of the key aspects of this cooperation, and being able to do an informed solution basically consists of two layers. One layer is having some experts lay out the strategy for you to understand what is supposed to happen and how to do it. And the second layer is having the data available at your disposal to make this informed decision. Therefore, the data and the strategies can be considered the first steps into creating a successful smart city strategy and implementation. I can't seem to, yeah, okay. If we are talking about building smart city, we need to think about it from the bottom up. We cannot just create a document or implement some particular solutions. We need to already have the vision inside on where it's supposed to head. And when we are talking about smart city, we cannot forget about basic description and maps. That's topography. So if you visualize this pyramid, that's basically understanding where you are gathering the data from and what the data are telling you. Then you need to have some data platform. That's where you are combining the data and where you are reading it and analyzing it. Then you need to set a proper ontology. That's relationships between the data sets. And then you can apply all of this into something that's called a digital twin. A digital twin can be something like one of the implementations. I'll show you at the end a possible visualization of this. And based on this digital twin, you can then do this informed decision that you have been talking about through key performance indicators, understanding which scenarios are better and which are worse. What is digital twin? That's a way for you to try out some implementations before you invest the money and before you can possibly make a mistake. That's basically recreating your city in a digital environment, either through a 3D model with some parameters or through a mathematical model where you don't actually see anything, but you can input all the changes that you want to try out and understand before you actually buy it. And this is the only safe way to understand if a proposed solution can work for you. We look at each city as a combination of 4 main areas. That's urbanism, energy, environment, and mobility. And mobility is the main topic of today's panel discussion and discussion overall. There's, of course, more areas of expertise within each city that are also very important, such as healthcare, and so on, and schools, and so on. But these 4 areas have been designated as the most important areas of expertise. And here at Czech Technical University, in the Czech Institute of Informatics, Robotics, and Cybernetics, we are actually working on a project that combines all these 4 areas in a tool that lets you compare different scenarios in a city and helps you understand if what you are doing is a good idea. This is kind of an idea of digital twin, but this is a little more complex because you are combining more than one technology. I know it sounds a little complicated, but this is really the only way to find out if your plan makes sense long term before investing the money. I would like to briefly talk about the strategic background of a city. This is a visualization that we have made for Chisinau City as well, to understand what the city is missing perhaps. And this is the basic structure of what you should consider and basically check out all the documents that you already have and fill in the rest. When you have all these documents, then you can be sure that you have kind of included all the important parts of your city, that you actually have a legible strategy for each part of your city, and then you can move forward. Then you can create the digital twin, and then you can try out new measures and implementation. Of course, each document should have some understandable structure. They should all be structured in the same way so that you can easily combine all of them into a sort of implementation strategy for your city. But this is not what is important. Before I give the floor to Dr. Kocourek to make it as short as possible, I would like to show you one last thing, and that's one of the possible visualizations of digital twin. This is a mobility model, and this is the simplest visualization of what it can look like if you are trying out new things. This is in Prague. It's a very well-known intersection in Prague, and this allows us to try out different scenarios of traffic control, of how the infrastructure is built, and basically lets us play around with the city and understand the changes before we rebuild it, which is an investment of several hundred millions Czech crowns, and it takes 5 years or more to do this. And then if we do it wrong, then there's no way back. So we really are trying to push this approach of creating a digital twin. It doesn't need to be transportation. This is a transportation model. It can be energy, it can be anything else, but it allows you to understand what will happen if you do a certain change. So this is one of the most important implementation I would like to mention. There are others, of course, that are being done in Europe and in the world, such as mobility as a service is a huge application that allows people to move freely around the city and makes mobility more accessible to people and actually aids sustainable mobility. Other implementations like traffic control with preferences of public transport, of course, but I don't think it is necessary to talk about these right now. Really, the main message that when we talked about this with Mr. Svitek should be to understand that you need to have a certain strategy behind your projects. You need to cover the main areas of the city, and then think about creating digital twins. And basically, it sets an approach to create an optimal way to apply investments in the city. And that's all. Thank you.
Thank you so very much, Roman. It was really a very interesting presentation on the overall concept and how the cities are currently adopting what is the overall approach to intelligent transport systems. I loved your focus on ecosystem level look, so that before starting making a digital copy, you are actually focusing on the living city, and then looking from the strategic point of view, then building the digital copy of it, which is very important in today's world when the digitalization becomes such a big part of the society. I'm very, very happy to hand over to present our next presenter, József Kocourek, if I pronounce your name correctly, from SmartPlan and Czech Technical University of Prague. He holds PhD degrees in traffic engineering from the Czech Technical University, Faculty of Transportation Sciences, is the author of more than 50 articles, is a member of the European Platform of Transport Scientists, and since 2012 is a certified auditor of road safety, among many other interesting professional experiences that he has been going through. So over to you, Dr. Kocourek, and we are happy to hear how your work unfolded in Moldova.
Okay, so thank you very much for your very perfect introducing. It was very nice. Thank you very much. So I don't know if you see it. Everything.
You can see if you could make it full size. expand it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, super. So thank you for your introduction. This project I can introduce because this project was very extensive. The company SmartPlan was also contracted, which deals with issues such as smart cities. For example, this company creates sustainable urban mobility plans and prepares, for example, internships for students at the Faculty of Transportation Sciences. By the way, two of the team are present. My colleague Roman Dostal, he presented now, and Michal Neumann. Both will be present into the panel discussion. I would also like to greet Octavian Lungu, who together with Alexander Rotar, who oversaw this project from the position of UNDP project as well as project managers. So, firstly, I can introduce some structure of the document. Firstly, the document has a lot of parts. First was inception report, next was analytical part. There was some information about Chisinau City, and then we create some visions. Visions was in design part, and in the end we create some action and implementation part.
I'm sorry to implement, Joseph. Let's just introduce that it is about the smart transport and mobility strategy that you helped to develop for the city of Chisinau.
Yeah.
So this is, yeah, thank you.
Thank you. And what about vision? Vision is some politics and decision makers top. And if you create a vision, it's a very fundament for our work. In the vision, for example, from Chisinau is the green city of the future, because in this sentence, it's a lot of information about lowering negative effect of automobile transport. We can lowering traffic flow volumes, we can lowering emissions, and so on. How to go about strategy? It's the same. If we build, for example, some house, we need some fundament, we need pillars, we need a roof. On the roof is a vision, and under vision is some pillars. We demonstrate some 4 pillars, very basic pillars. It's a traffic in motion, parking, public transport, and active mobility. There are 3 areas which go through pillars as well as the floors, and it was road safety, central IT systems, and electromobility. And you see that ITS systems are one part of a big thema, big scope in our project. For example, traffic in motion, we find some problems. For example, traffic management using fixed signal plans, for example, absence of traffic detection and intersections, no public transport preference, and emergency vehicles prioritization. And we create some measures. Measures was from traffic lights modernization, public transport preferences, emergency vehicle priority, and so on. Second was parking. Parking, we find some problems. It was, for example, no coordinated parking management, heavy traffic in the city center, lack of parking spaces, poor of poor use of public space, for example. And we create new measures. We recommend, for example, new parking management, city parking zones, pricing and tariff policy, park and ride parking lots, and so on and so on. Third pillar was, for example, public transport, and for example, problem there was in Chisinau, uncoordinated particular modes of transport, unfavorable tariff conditions, long walking distance. Public transport is not competitive to the individual transport in Chisinau now. And we recommend some measures. It's a big topic: integration of public transport, inclusion of the railway, the new network designing, quality standards, transport priority, uniform tariff system, and so on. And last pillar was active mobility. And you see in Chisinau, we see no vision with regard to bike infrastructure development. Next, we don't find, or we find wide city roads create barrier effect for pedestrians. Next was problem with inadequate design of absence of elements for handicapped people and long pedestrian crossing over wide roads. And if you see our goals of project was not only recommendation, but we create, for example, new design of generally design of bike routes. And if you create, for example, new roads, we recommend some a little bit better solution. It's an islands, for example. And road safety, high fatality rate of road accidents have in Chisinau. High percentage of accidents with pedestrians. So we recommend to make some road safety inspection of currently infrastructure, and we, or in Chisinau, must have a good road to use for good users things. Central ITS system have, for example, problem with decentralized systems, technology monitoring in separated software, no interaction between implemented system. Next is impossible automation. Many databases is there, no central view, no structured application for third part applications. For it's a big problems there. So we create some measures, central integration platform and central room. And in the end, last area was electromobility. So it's a new part. And we recommend some measures, charging infrastructure and vehicles. And in the end, I can say that the measures are important for the development of transport in the city of Chisinau. And at the same time, a key starter of one of the important areas of the smart city for successful development. None of the measures can be excluded or not implemented. If you see there some example, there is even coherence between some measures. In this example, there is the interconnection are the pillars between public transport and parking, which are a clear priority in the city. If paid, for example, parking zones, we are introduced in the city, then at the same time, the other of public transport connections must be improved. Space is created for ecological vehicles, for example, or for the other types of activity mobility, for electromobility and network of park and ride car. Parks is created, for example, which can reduce the high intensity in the center of Chisinau, but for public transport to work, it must have priority in the street, public transport preferences using traffic lights and so on, bus lanes and so on, etc. Then the tariff policy must follow so that those who want to go to center by car don't live there and want to park there for a long time, have it more expensive than if they went by public transport. Such measures must then be implemented according to the last trends in our order to increase road safety. Okay, so it's all from me. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so very much, Josef. I loved your slide, which you didn't read it out, but I love the content of it. It was about that it is, these are the systems which are created, if I'm saying it correctly, to make the life of the inhabitants easier, so that the transports are, so that the businesses are run efficiently and environmental concerns are taken into consideration. I think that's the best, perfect way to end the presentation. I'm very, very curious to move to Batumi example with Etuna Lomitsa, who is presenting Batumi experience of not only collaboration with the UNDP, but also with our Polish partners. I think I can hear myself. If you could mute a little bit, please. So Etuna has about 10 years experience of working in the public sector in strategic and sustainable development fields, including transport, buildings, and waste management. She's currently heading the municipal department in Batumi City Hall with specific responsibilities in policy planning, project management, and fundraising. And she represents the main contact person for the EU, international, financial, and donor organizations on behalf of the Batumi City Hall. So several successful projects have been implemented in Batumi under her leadership, such as Batumi Bus Project, Green Cities Action Plan, which is introduction of EU energy efficiency standards in the buildings, etc. So over to you, Etuna, with all this impressive work already done. Let's see how it echoes Chisinau experience in the Georgian context.
Thank you, Fatuna, for the perfect introduction. I will share now my screen. Is it visible? Good afternoon, everyone. It is my pleasure to be here with you and to present the experience of Batumi municipality with regards to transforming transport infrastructure. My presentation will be mainly about the Green Cities project, which was funded by UNDP and implemented by UNDP and funded by Global Environment Facility. Within this project, Batumi prepared and officially adopted sustainable integrated sustainable transport plan for Batumi. The document was officially adopted by the City Council in 2018, and it has it incorporates activities which are foreseen to be implemented in 2018 and 2030 years. So what was the situation before the project in Georgia overall? So the preconditions that need for a sustainable urban transport. It should be highlighted that transport sector in Georgia accounts for about more than 50% of total CO2 emission. It was based on the inventory that was conducted in 2014. And the challenges with regards to sustainable urban transport on national level were the following. It was the absence of national strategy and policy, absence of holistic planning approaches and practices with regard to sustainable urban transport. It was about lack of municipal finances for sustainable urban transport measures, low public awareness on benefits of urban transport, absence of guiding principles and technical standards for sustainable urban transport, and lack of knowledge on best international practices. What was the situation in Batumi specifically before this project? It was the following. The city suffered from permanent traffic congestions. Public transport systems were inefficient. Parking management did not work. City was not comfortable at all for pedestrians and for cyclists. Taxi market is still unregulated, unfortunately. There were also absence of systematic planning approaches, and public attitude favored private cars. When we started the project together with UNDP, Batumi City was actually an implementing partner together with the Ministry of Environmental Protection of Georgia. The approach and methodology for the development of sustainable transport plan for Batumi was the following. There was an expert group comprised of international and local experts. They worked very actively with the stakeholders from public sector, from NGOs, from academia, from independent experts as well. We held several stakeholder workshops, individual consultations, public discussions. There was also a wide media coverage, simultaneous videos, and based on these activities, the approach was the following. The territory of Batumi municipality was divided into 78 transport zones, survey, which included about 1,500 households. We conducted passenger counts, traffic data collections, and based on this information, transport model has been developed for Batumi. It is about for a level transport model, and with this transport model, Batumi is the first city in Georgia with this kind of transport model. It is software which is able to based on mathematical algorithms, develop some scenarios about changes before it is applied. Overall, we can develop various scenarios for development of transport infrastructure in Batumi. Considering our transport model and the results of this simulations with our transport model, we have developed a strategy and action plan for Batumi. I would like to highlight the main important directions of the strategy. We have identified three following strategic directions and targets. It is about increased transport safety and security, to offer and optimize alternative sustainable transport options for walking, cycling, and public transport, and also to reduce the effects of transport, negative effects of transport on people, health, and the environment. The slide is in Georgian, but I will try to list the main activities that are considered under our transport strategy, which is, as I mentioned, officially adopted. It is about activities under parking strategy, under strategy for optimization of the public transport, walking and cycling, electric mobility, distribution tracks, intelligent traffic control systems, and of course, mobility and public relations. And these are the main directions also under the sectoral strategies of our sustainable urban transport plan. Parking concept and scenarios include activities regarding to the parking, introduction of parking zones, introduction of new pricing policy for the parking, improvement of parking enforcement, organization of off-road parking in the old town, and also introduction of special tourist park and ride. You can see on the map the in 2 entrances of the city, where we plan to introduce park and ride, which will allow tourists to leave their private cars and to switch to public transport. We also plan to introduce hourly paid parking systems in the central territory of the city. We also plan to develop mobile applications for the payment. With regards to cycling systems, we plan to extend a bicycle network that it covers the whole area of the city, expand the network of bike rental stations to cover the whole territory of the city as well, and to provide more effective ways for payment. One of the important directions under our strategy is the minibus network optimization. I would like to highlight the fact that only in post-Soviet countries you can see the minibuses in a public transport fleet. So our main objective is to ensure gradual decrease of number of minibuses and increase the number of buses. But it is, of course, somehow a sensitive issue, as there is at least 600 minibuses operating on a daily basis in Batumi, and it won't be easy to decrease the period. With regards to bus network optimization, it is ongoing activity for now, and the city is trying to adjust the network to the needs to the citizens. And of course, the most interesting part of the strategy is what are the activities that are already implemented based on our SAMP. First of all, I would like to mention a renewal of our bus fleet. About 1 year ago, the city of Batumi has procured about 8 units of electric buses with support of EBRD grant and loan. And with these electric buses, Batumi is the first city in whole South Caucasus where electric buses are introduced in municipal transport. After that, 40 units plus 60 units of Euro 5 diesel buses were procured, and they are already introduced in municipal transport fleet. And the last but not least, about our demonstration activities that were funded by UNDP as a demonstration of the implementation of our SAMP. With the grant support of UNDP, Batumi municipality arranged dedicated bus lanes on the main streets of Batumi. It is 3.3 kilometers in total. So the dedicated bus lanes are allowed for buses and also bicycles. In addition, 30 units of electric information boards were installed in dedicated bus lanes. We have also introduced hourly paid parking systems in the city center. It is about 6 locations have been selected for these purposes, and these 6 locations can accommodate in total 200 cars. Shortly about our ongoing cooperation with GIZ. It is the project called Mobility for Cities. It is kind of continuation of our project with UNDP, because these activities that are selected for the implementation within this project are taken from our SAMP. We signed the memorandum in 2020, and the project implementation period is activities are considered to be implemented within our cooperation. This is cooperation for the optimization of public transport network, organization of planning and capacity building, supporting implementation of the existing strategic documents and plans. It is mainly our SAMP. We have recently finalized working on a cycling master plan for Batumi. It is currently the draft document, but we hope that the City Council will adopt this document very soon. And this cycling master plan is also based on our adopted SAMP. development of walkability concept. This activity is about introduction of car-free zone in the center of Batumi, in the old town, and the last concept that we are going to work is a safe way to school guidelines. And the last but not least, I would like to also mention our ongoing project together with the UNDP. It is a Polish Challenge Fund, which financed installation of a smart traffic light. In Batumi, we work closely together with Polish company Spinea, which is going to procure and help us to install this smart traffic light. And we plan to install it in our dedicated bus lane to ensure holistic approach to this. So it was very, very briefly about our sustainable urban mobility plan for Batumi and the actions that are implemented based on this plan. And I will be very happy to share this document with you in case of interest, and of course to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you so very much, Tuna. It's really comprehensive and impressive. We do have questions from the audience, and I will ask you to answer them at the Q&A part at the end. It is very interesting that initiatives that you presented in terms of the bus lane, for example, and changing the car fleet and looking at the strategic outlook of the city very much go in parallel with Chisinau plans, and it is very interesting to discuss this further with the panel that I'm very happy to introduce. Our panelists are from Georgia and from Moldova and Czech. And Mr. Octavian Lungu from UNDP Moldova. He's been working in the transport sector since 1994 with the Civil Aviation Administration, the Ministry of Transport and Infrastructure, and Chisinau City Hall Transportation Department. Since 2019, he implemented several UNDP assignments as a national consultant in urban transport and mobility. We also welcome on board Mr. Michal Newman, CEO of Market Connect consulting company in export promotion and international development, focusing on innovative solutions in the field of smart cities, intelligent mobility, environment, and energy, with head offices in Czech Republic, Luxembourg, and strong presence in both Georgia and Moldova. I'm happy to welcome Mr. Gela Gwashilava of Partnership for Road Safety, who has been heading Eastern Alliance for Safe Sustainable Transport and EU Transeco project on the Georgian behalf. He is an author of several policy papers and contributor to World Bank, ADB, EU, and Transeco reports related to road safety and sustainable transport development issues. Is really an actively involved in UNDP supported initiatives as well. And most importantly, Mr. Tomo Gagabadze from Changes for Equal Rights, who is an civic activist and defender of rights of people with disabilities. And he is actively participating in the mobility projects and developments taking place in Batumi city and beyond. So, welcome to the panel, and I would like to ask our colleagues from Moldova and Czech Republic to go back to Moldova project experience and share, their view of the processes that followed the development of the strategy for the city, mobility strategy, and then we will go back to the Georgian experience. Over to you, Octavian.
Good afternoon. Thank you for the introduction. As you said, I worked for more than 2 years with UNDP as national consultant for Sustainable Green Cities project. And that project included intelligent transport systems, sustainable urban mobility, and also city hall department reform and energy efficiency as well. So I'm glad to see my Czech colleagues here, Josef, Roman, Michal, sharing their experience to Georgian cities also. Currently, I manage a EU-funded project similar to that implemented with GIZ in Batumi for improving public transport system. And thank you for inviting me to speak about one specific project presently implemented in our capital city, Chisinau. In the strategy developed by Czech experts, the public transport priority has been described as one of measures for organizing a sustainable transport system. Also, intelligent solutions were proposed for implementing such measure, and that included adaptive traffic lights and use of roadside units and onboard units for so-called V2X communication. But before implementing more intelligent measures, the Chisinau City Hall decided to dedicate part of the street to public transport units only. And first steps actually were made in this direction 7 years ago, when new transport strategy was developed by a team of international consultants. And the analysis made by the experts identified a low speed of buses and trolley buses, and they proposed the implementation of dedicated bus lanes on main city streets to increase the speed of the public transport. 4 years later, a policy brief has been issued to address this solution, and it was discussed publicly. In 2020, new street design guidelines have been developed with the support of UNDP Moldova Sustainable Green Cities project. You can see some examples from the street design guide with options for organizing separate public transport lanes, and it includes bike lane as well. During the same year, a pilot project has been developed, also with the support of UNDP, and it included reorganization of traffic at every crossroad covered by the project. I'm not sure how many conference calls we had during that time, but our consultations with stakeholders regarding the implementation of pilot project lasted more than 6 months. Later, the City Hall started the implementation of dedicated bus lanes on 2 pilot streets, and new traffic signs have been installed, as well as the information panels for the drivers. While implementing the projects on 2 pilot streets, UNDP hired an international consultant to develop a gradual expansion of bus network to include other major streets in Chisinau. The consultant developed a strategic vision of a dedicated bus lane network expansion, and it was based on city zoning, on the travel metrics, on model split, and on a public transport system accessibility before COVID-19 pandemic. Also, a roadmap, including priority actions and measures, deadlines, expected results for next 5 years has been developed. And as you can see, the network is expanded from the downtown to main residential areas, as almost all trolley bus routes goes through the city center to those areas. In 2021, the City Hall finalized the rehabilitation of several main streets and continued the renewal of bus fleet. And more than 150 buses will be added to the fleet by the end of this year. And the number of trolley buses will increase as well. To optimize the use of the fleet and to increase the speed, the expansion of dedicated bus lanes network started this autumn. Also, an information campaign is planned to promote benefits of public transport lanes by the end of this year, and also to motivate drivers to leave their cars at home. As main benefit, I already could mention that the speed of trolley buses on pilot streets has been doubled after its implementation. On the next slides, I will bring some real photos from the project, and I saw some colleagues from the city hall, and I'm glad that they managed to attend this seminar, this webinar, and maybe they could add some more information if needed. So actually, you can see that the traffic was, yeah.
Yeah. So it's a dedicated lane.
Yes.
And that
so
has
this
to continue.
Sure. So this is briefly about one of the projects we implement with the City Hall. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so very much. Due to time limitations, we have to move to another speaker, but this is a remarkable example that initial strategy really translates into follow-up action at the city level. My question to Michal Newman would be, if there was a city in Georgia, like Nino mentioned, that there are other cities who would like to follow Batumi experience and launch their own strategies for smart city and smart transport, what would be your recommendations to the cities? What are the things to consider when embarking on such initiatives?
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me to this event, and I'm really happy to see a lot of famous people, a lot of colleagues here, and share a little bit our experience of work both in Chisinau and both in Georgia. Actually, also we are working on projects with Batumi and Tbilisi. Well, according to our experience, what is very important is to combine actually two things. One of them is elaboration of such strategic documents as we have seen on the example of Chisinau, but also of Batumi. And at the same time, progressive implementation of different measures, starting maybe with some smaller pilot projects, but which would expand into a larger scale. So this is something we have seen also, and we have done in Chisinau. There we have even started the other way around by starting with some smaller pilot projects, and then the city said, okay, we would need some more structured approach, and there is a possibility to hire some Czech consultants through this Czech UNDP Partnership for Sustainable Development Goals, Czech Expertise on Demands, which is also available for Georgia. We help to put them into contact with Professor Svitek and his team, and the project started there. And parallelly to that, we have been doing different pilot projects, be it implementation of and also an intelligent intersection with adaptive traffic control, or implementation of a smart city platform, which now we are also doing in Georgia, in Tbilisi actually, and other projects right now in the field of public transport. And very crucial is the support of international financing institutions, because of course the municipalities in Georgia or Moldova cannot finance all these projects on their own, and there is a very crucial support from the part of UNDP, as we have seen here in the projects in Batumi and Tbilisi. By the way, I think that the colleagues from Batumi and Chisinau, I think that in Chisinau they got inspired by your projects in Batumi, Green Cities, as I believe, and they also implemented Green Cities project in Moldova right afterwards. And need support from other donors like EU currently in Chisinau, or GIZ, or Czech Development Agency, Czech UNDP Challenge Fund, and others. So I think crucial is a combination of such strategic thinking, strategic way of thinking, and implementation of concrete measures. Start to implement concrete.
Excellent. I loved your point about support from international financial institutions, and I think this is a topic for another kind of webinar and discussion to go into depth of it, though one of the key ones. I will quickly move to Gela Vashilava and ask him to give his perspective, which might also add different angle to our discussion. Gela, from your experience, could you please share what are the aspects that you would highlight for the cities developing smart infrastructure and transport? Over to you, Gela.
Thank you very much for the invitation. Very interesting presentations. Just I would like to share some points that for me, intelligent transport, first of all, means transport system means healthy and safe transport system. What I'm meaning that we have to give people alternatives to the private cars. So technology itself cannot create policy or cannot create vibrant cities. So I'm often compare it with healthy system. If a person wants to lose weight, he or she should go to the diet. Yes, same thing we have to apply to the private cars. We have to use road diet system if we want healthy streets, environments. So any transport policy, you can call it smart or whatever names, main priority should be pedestrians, cyclists, public transport, then private cars. So if you don't create or make hierarchy and you don't prioritize low speeds, then you cannot call it smart transportation system. So how we can change this approach and how we change not only in transportation, I mean in land use. This is very important. What I'm seeing here and outside also Georgia, that sometimes safety, mobility sacrifice to the private business interests, okay, to the development of the other interests, but it's not sustainable development. So this is very important that we have to think that how first we have to think about people. Mm-hmm. Technology itself cannot focus on people. Policy should be focused on these people. What kind of transport policy we have? So COVID clearly showed us that there is such alternatives and people own bikes. We had many meets around transportation and mobility, not only in Georgia, other countries, also in Moldova. I've been many times that you cannot solve congestion, but I would tell on the contrary, we are telling that we are moving to the electric cars, but electric cars does not solve congestion problems. That's it never solves, because it will create new traffic congestion, new type of congestion. Also, electric cars are not safe. They have very many safety problems too. So we have to think how we really integrate the priority modes, I call pedestrians, cyclists, and inclusivity. If we talk about inclusivity, what Batumi made transformation, that first thing that it is, I would say, areas which transformed and changed in Batumi or Tbilisi. You feel it different from other streets, less noise, more safe and more pleasant environment. And how it happened? We just give one way to other modes. Roads should be shared, must be shared equally. Shared and priority we have to give to this 70%. People who does not own or cannot afford to drive cars. Otherwise, we cannot speak about intelligent transport.
I love your focus on road diet and what it means and moving kind of.
Because when you are on that, if you don't follow diet, when I'm not following, I have to buy new belt, bigger and bigger. But it is not solution.
It's not.
So only
we're going back to changing behavior.
What I wanted to tell that only building new roads and not thinking on how people use these new roads, you may cause induced demand. So this is very important that we already have sufficient road space. We just need it to equally share with all road users. And just, I want to finish with what COVID showed also. 30% of drivers in Moldova, in Czech Prague, or in other countries, they drive only 3 or up maximum 5 kilometers a day. Why we cannot replace it by a bicycle, by scooter, by other modes? And why we cannot make 5 or 10 minute accessibility of public transport our key priority? Otherwise,
so essentially this is studying human behavior and adjusting the existing systems accordingly to,
because
to optimize
affordability, inclusivity, and because it is clear that 70% of population who cannot drive or don't own cars, they are now marginalized than this 30%. So
who owns
we
cars.
just need to create this equilibrium new.
Thank you so very much, Gela. I'm super sorry that we have little time for the discussion because people's perspective and starting policy work from people's angle, I think it's one of my favorite subjects and most kind of needed at this point. I would like to give floor to Toma as well to speak about accessibility for all, like to continue Gela's discussion, and where the groups that work for the persons with disabilities and their inclusion, where they come in the process of policy development or implementation of the activities, and what he thinks is the most important aspect to consider today in building such systems, inclusive systems for all. Over to you.
Thank you very much. I would like to greet all of you. It's a real pleasure for me to participate in this roundtable. Thank you very much for inviting me. Thanks to all presenters, those who asked the question, because very interesting experiences were changed. And I do believe that Batumi will be among successful countries, and we also will be able to share our success stories with others. And I will continue Gela's pathos and highlight that main focus should be human being. People should be main focus when we discuss several policies. When we speak about people, about society, we need to highlight that people with disabilities should by all means be among them, and not people who have no problems. And here we mean people, among people with disabilities, I mean all people, not just visible disabilities, wheelchair users and so on. No, people with mental disorders and so on and so on, because such people have real difficulties in everyday life with employment, with everything. And I will go back to transport issues. Very important changes are made, and I will agree with Etuna and other people. I will agree with Etuna that many plans are already submitted and processes are already started. For example, by 2020, we intended to develop action plan for people with disabilities for some municipal plan, but due to pandemic, thanks to a pandemic, this process is delayed. But the fact that new buses are already introduced, For example, municipal adapted buses, we do call them adapted from our perspective. However, in parallel, it is so needs of all people with disabilities is not envisaged. So it's so now I want to introduce term universal access, universal accessibility. And so everything, all information, transport, everything should be accessible for almost everyone, elderly people, children, skateboard or users or cyclists. So access should be accessible for almost everyone. Of course, this universal access does not exclude the use for some assistive devices, but main point should be envisaging maximally needs of all people. This is not universal design. This is based, this approach is based on individual practices when needs of individuals are taken into consideration while designing either bus or street. When we introduce the bus, we regrettably are not able to take into consideration needs of all. Toma.
My question is, how much do you think the organizations or the groups that work for ensuring this universal access have capacity and enough skills to pursue this work together with the municipal authorities or the other organizations that are engaged in this process?
Thank you, Khatuna, for this question. It's very important issue because we need universal design because modern world goes to this direction. But this is kind of something new for us, and there is no experience based on which we could say that with the engagement of particular group, we can ensure this in shortest period of time. This is not, this problem is not just of municipality or disability community. This is something new, so it requires systemic approach. All groups should be equally engaged, and international experience is very important in this respect. Experience of the countries who already managed to develop and introduce concepts of universal design, universal access. So their experience is absolutely crucial. And of course, it's also very important to raise a public awareness, civil society awareness. One thing is to introduce this bus, but if there are cars on the bus stop and if no one lets this bus to the bus to stop, or if people do not understand that they should not park their cars on the parking space for people with disabilities, then nothing will be improved. Also, society organizations, civil society organizations should also be very active, and people with disabilities should also be very active in solving these problems. We all should be active, and of course, state should also help us by activating its mechanisms to ensure that maximally many people and groups are engaged and participate and share these experiences and values. So this is something which requires building, you know. I also want to add, as for the design, I want to add regarding the design in Georgia. We already translate street design international manual, which we want to implement in all municipalities. It is international standard, which is developed with participation of the best experts, and namely such textbooks or manuals providing detailed explanation how intersections or crossroads should be arranged, taking into consideration needs of people with limited abilities. So we already work in this direction. We have already some knowledge. Some knowledge is already accumulated in our organization, but it should become official manual, and any change, any transformation, it should become norm, yes. And so in this regard, there is some knowledge already accumulated in Georgia, and we already are able to make some small changes, and these small changes then provide grounds to bigger ones. Of course, we can't change everything in one day, but we can start. For example, Batumi project caused interest in Kutaisi, in Tbilisi. So
I think this is a very optimistic note to wrap up the panel. And to allow to answer the question, Octavian, thank you very much that you already responded to the question by Elena. Jonas, if you could take over the Q&A, I think we have one more question.
Thank you very much, Katuna. Do you hear me well? Dear colleagues, dear partners, dear friends, as we are a little bit over time, this Q&A session will be maximally 5 minutes long. So I would like to start maybe with the question from Jaroslava, which goes to Etuna. Etuna, could you please answer whether you considered during the elaboration of strategic document population growth projections in Batumi?
Yes, not only population growth projections, but also projections for the growth of tourists, number of tourists as well, because our existing transport model allowed us to make such very valuable calculations in this regard. And I read already the question. It was about considering existing strategies also while working on our SAM. Unfortunately, the city does not have yet the master plan of Batumi, so-called land use plan for Batumi, but existing sectoral strategies such as economic development and social development strategies were also reviewed while working on our SAM.
Thank you very much. It was such a prompt that it gave us space for another questions, which I will pose maybe to Mr. Michal, but whoever can grab it. I would like to ask, we were talking about Batumi, about Tbilisi, about Chisinau. We also touched the Prague, but is the process same when we are talking about some small city or about some small town? Would even small town benefit from the implementation of intelligent transportation mechanisms? As I said, I am addressing it to Mr. Michal, but whoever else can grab it.
Yes, maybe I can start, and then colleagues can add. Definitely, this intelligent transport system can be adapted in different size of cities. Of course, it's not the same system and not the same way of work and impact. But we have been working, and colleagues from SmartPlan can also confirm they are working in many cities of, let's say, middle-sized cities here in the Czech Republic of several dozens of thousands of inhabitants, up to big cities like Prague or Chisinau. So there are tools also for smaller cities, but well, unfortunately, probably we don't have much time to go much into detail. But if colleagues can add this.
Yes, definitely. A very good question. You know why? Because sometimes we talk only about big cities, about centers, but not about small cities and peripheries. But actually, active mobility, the most needed is our small cities, because sometimes they lack public transportation, so they rely on private cars. So what you can do in small cities, of course, you can provide active mobility modes, scooters, cycling, because distances are more shorter. So for supporting such mobility schemes means that you're supporting public health, you're supporting public economy, and you really make these places more livable, it's a problem also in Europe, by the way. In small cities, the reliance on cars, private cars, are much bigger than more dense areas. So it's more important for such cities to have, I'm not saying to have something very big program, but key directions, I mean, which encourages, inviting people to be more active. Because what is the case in Georgia, in the regions, in the small cities, people are moving less. And if they move, they mostly move by car, which is very bad.
Thank you very much. Maybe last remarks, and then we will really have to finish because we are over time. So maybe Mr. Roman and then Mr. Octavian, and then we will just wrap up and say goodbye.
Yeah.
So, gentlemen.
Thank you. Very briefly, it is wrong to assume that smart city can only be used for a city. It can be used for towns and it can be used for villages as well. The scale of the implementation will vary. The different measures will, of course, vary. I will not repeat what Mr. Gela Kwashilava said. I agree with everything. I would also like to mention that even sustainable urban mobility plans that are usually used for large cities can also be created for smaller towns, because every town, every village, every region needs a direction that they are going towards, and it can only be achieved through these plans. We personally have experience with creating plans such as SAMPs for as small towns as 10,000 inhabitants, and it works. The people are following these guidelines and they are moving towards a sustainable urban mobility. So absolutely, I support having smart city strategies or sustainable urban mobility plans in all sizes of all towns. Thank you.
Yes, so I'd like to support the idea of Czech colleagues that such solutions could be implemented in small cities as well. And we had the chance to see even in the Czech Republic, in 3 different cities, different size cities, how intelligent transport systems are implemented. And also regarding sustainable urban mobility planning, I would say that in Moldova, smaller cities started developing such plans earlier than the capital city. So it doesn't matter which size is the city in such a case. So thank you.
Thank you very, very much. So it is as usual. We opened more topics than we closed. But with this, because we are under time pressure, I will give word back to Khatuna, who will close.
Thank you very much to everybody. I think my knowledge about smart city and transport systems has clearly benefited from the preparation work and also meeting all of you. I hope that it was equally interesting for you to build these bridges, and I look forward to any kind of cooperation that might come through, or future exchange that will come through this. We will be posting this video recording of today's wonderful discussion on the website on YouTube and share the links with you. Please feel free to reach out with more questions. We'll be able to reply by email. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.